advantage, Djokovic.
Simply too good. Djokovic does it.
Dominating this tournament, Novak made it official. Winning his 10th Oz Open and matching Rafael Nadal's record 22 Grand Slams.
This probably is the, I would say, biggest victory in my life, considering the circumstances.
Even the fiercest of foes forced to concede.
Novak, I don't know what to say. I mean, he's the greatest that has ever held a tennis racket.
With our own bad boy of tennis tweeting,
"We created a monster. Well done."
Novak Djokovic is now one step closer to being crowned the greatest of all time. But he's also been haunted by a much less coveted title, an inconvenient champ.
It's just unbelievable. He gave Stefanos a masterclass. It's difficult for Novak because at times there's always, I guess, a controversy bubble. But, you know, he talks with his racket.
His racket is not quite loud enough to drown out public opinion, as Georgie Tunny found out when she hit the streets.
Do you think that Novak Djokovic is the GOAT? The greatest of all time?
Absolutely no.
I'm not a fan of his attitude.
What do you think about Novak Djokovic?
Reasonably divisive character.
He's not the Joker anymore. He's not fun and he's not light.
There's Novak's history of allegedly faking injuries, including this year's hamstring moment, hosting a tennis tournament in June 2020 that quickly turned into a super spreader event. His public anti-vax stance, his dad posing with pro-Putin supporters, and who could forget when he got deported last year. And that's all before he slipped into something a little more comfortable for last night's trophy presentation.
I thought it was diamonds to begin with, but it is made up of very small little crocodiles, the number 22 with his Lacoste sponsorship.
Who do you think is the GOAT then?
Oh, good question.
I think he's a really good player, yeah.
Would you be happy with him to win more titles here?
Definitely.
Do you think he's the greatest of all time?
I got no idea. I don't know much about tennis.
So if Novak is set to be the GOAT on the court, will he ever be the GOAT of our hearts?
There's a reason why I've played my best tennis throughout my career in Australia and on this court.
Well, no one knows a good tennis time quite like Georgie Tunny. She's here with some big tennis energy.
Thank you. Yes.
I feel like 12 months is a very long time in tennis, and you were there last night.
I was.
What was the vibe in the stadium like?
Interestingly, like Novak Djokovic, it was pretty divided. It was very clear Tsitsipas, Greek fans, or you're going for the Joker and Serbian fans. But then there was a casual tennis fan, and I have to say that the overwhelming majority of them, slightly older, do not like Novak Djokovic,
right,
to the point where I was sitting behind a couple of rows from some very passionate Serbian fans, and they'd be there going, Nole, 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 which is what Novak's fans do. And that she was like, we love Novak! And then like a guy a couple of rows in front of her like, no, we don't! So it was a very, very vocal crowd. There was a lot of energy there. Yeah. But for people who love Novak Djokovic, there were so many fans outside of the stadium kind of surrounding Rod Laver as well. They were almost louder than everyone else inside the actual court.
So the other divisive figure in tennis is obviously Nick Kyrgios. Yes. We saw that tweet from him saying we've created a monster. Mm-hmm. What's he actually mean by that, do you think?
I think for Nick Kyrgios, they've had this complicated relationship, right, where they started out with a lot of animosity towards each other. Nick was very critical, was easy to poke the bear because he was in this weird situation where he actually had the upper hand. So he felt that going head-to-head with him, he had the better winning percentage. So there's a bit of arrogance there and he could kind of say whatever he wanted to Novak. He's very critical about his stance and what happened throughout the pandemic. But he's referring directly there to the deportation of Novak Djokovic at last year's Australian Open and how Djokovic is now using that as motivation. There's no question that has been fueling him throughout, ever since he first touched down in Adelaide.
Well, Kyrgios is probably one of the only people in the world who potentially can beat him.
Yes. Yeah, and he even said throughout the tournament through his Twitter, being like, it makes me feel good about my own tennis that I've beaten this guy because Novak was just in that kind of form. And he's, gone on the record now of saying that Novak will win 28, which he probably could.
Yeah.
Do you think Novak's actually a bad boy? Because, I mean, everyone's like, we hate it, but he's quite polite. Just people just don't seem to like him.
I don't think he's the bad boy of tennis. I think he's the disliked boy of tennis.
I mean, that's pretty lame. I mean, we need a bad boy.
Yeah, I'm not sure if
I think people love a villain.
Honest.
Like, people just love to be
Yes.
allowed to hate someone.
People do love a villain. Australians love to hate someone, and Australians love to hate people who are very good at what they do.
Right.
So there's this tall poppy syndrome, I think, which does also work with Novak Djokovic, but then, of course, his views about vaccination and just also the way he carries himself on court. Apparently that puts a lot of people out. All the people I was talking to today in the street, they were like, oh, great player, we love him. As a person, though, not sure. Like, it's really this divide about being like, we can respect him for what he does on court, but we don't respect him for who he is.
It sounds like we miss McEnroe.
Yeah.
Like, he's someone that you can legitimately get really grumpy at.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that really exists. I mean, it's Nick Kyrgios. He's the one that everyone loves.
But he's Australian. It's very complicated.
We love him. That's
I know.
the difference.
I've always loved him, but it's. I don't think you can loathe Novak Djokovic because he is so good. Yeah. But people try.
He is extremely
good.
good.
He's very good.
Georgie Tunney, thank you so much for joining us.
Yay. Thanks, guys.